The words cut through the morning air like a knife across skin. New girl thinks she's really cool. I give her 10 minutes before she quits crying. Staff Sergeant Ryan Hollis stood at the center of the training yard obstacle course, arms crossed, voice loud enough to carry across 35 sweating bodies. It was 9 a.m. on a Tuesday that promised heat and dust. The kind of day where the red Georgia clay stuck to everything and the sun felt personal. Around him, soldiers paused mid-stretch, mid-conversation, heads turning toward the source of entertainment. Hollis fed off attention the way fire fed off oxygen. And this morning, he had a fresh target. Corporal Kate Brennan stood 20 feet away near the rope climb station, hands loose at her sides, face blank. She'd been assigned to the unit 4 weeks before, transferred in with very little paperwork and even less conversation. Quiet, kept to herself, did her job without fuss. To most, she was forgettable. To Hollis, she was an opportunity. You hearing me, Brennan? Hollis took 3 steps closer, boots crunching gravel. I asked if you need a head start. You know, since this course was designed for actual soldiers. A few scattered laughs rippled through the group. Corporal Miles Draven, Hollis's usual shadow, grinned and elbowed the guy next to him. Brennan didn't react. She reached for the hem of her combat shirt's sleeves, rolling the right one up to her elbow in smooth, practiced motions, then the left. The fabric bunched above her forearms, showing tanned skin, old scars, and something else. Ink dark, purposeful. On her left forearm, a tattoo spread from wrist to inner elbow. A stylized eagle, wings spread, talons gripping something that looked like coordinates or code. Beneath it, a string of numbers and letters, too small to read from a distance, but clear enough to catch the light when she moved. The design was clean, professional, the kind of work that cost money and meant something. Hollis's grin widened. He pointed at the ink like he'd just discovered gold. Oh, hold on. What do we have here? He turned to the group, voice rising in fake excitement. Guys, check it out. New girl's got herself some war ink. That's adorable. What is that, a Pinterest special? Did you get that at a boardwalk booth next to the airbrushed shirts? More laughter now, louder. Draven pulled out his phone, angling for a shot. Brennan's jaw tightened barely, but she said nothing. Her hands moved to the rope in front of her, fingers curling around the braided cord. Her grip was strange, not the fumbling grasp of someone learning. Her thumbs locked at specific angles, wrists rotated inward. Weight spread across her palms in a way that spoke of muscle memory older than this moment. Across the yard near the equipment shed, Master Sergeant Dale Jackson paused mid-inventory check. He was 52, grey at the temples, with the kind of face that had seen too much to be impressed by noise. But something about the way Brennan held that rope made him look twice, then at the tattoo. His eyes narrowed. The eagle, the code beneath it. He couldn't read it from here, but the design structure, the placement, it triggered something in the back of his mind. A briefing room years ago, hidden files, badges that weren't supposed to exist outside certain circles. He stepped closer, slowly, trying not to draw attention. Brennan's breathing shifted. 4 counts in through the nose. 4 counts hold. 4 counts out through the mouth. 4 counts hold. Repeat. The rhythm was invisible, unless you knew what to look for. And most didn't. Hollis certainly didn't. He was too busy performing. Seriously, though, Brennan, where'd you get that? I want to make sure I never go there. Looks like someone sneezed on your arm and called it art. Brennan's hands released the rope. She turned finally to face Hollis. Her expression gave away nothing. No anger, no embarrassment. Just a flat, waiting silence that somehow felt heavier than words. Hollis took it as weakness. What? Cat got your tongue? Or are you too busy pretending that fake tattoo means something? She held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she turned back to the rope, stepped into position, and launched herself upward. The climb was supposed to take 30 seconds for a passing score. 25 if you were fast. Brennan hit the top marker in 22 seconds flat, hands slapping the bell with a metallic clang that echoed across the yard. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Her legs drove in perfect rhythm with her arms, core tight, breath controlled. When she came down, she didn't slide or stumble. She walked her hands down the rope in textbook form, boots hitting the ground with barely a sound. Silence blanketed the yard for a beat. Then Hollis clapped slow and sarcastic. Well, beginner's luck, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see if she can do it twice, Draven snickered. A few others shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. Jackson, now standing 10 feet behind the group, folded his arms and watched. He'd seen a lot of soldiers climb ropes. Brennan's technique wasn't standard army. It was something else. In survival, evasion, resistance, escape, SEER school taught that grip, that breath control, that efficiency. And SEER graduates didn't usually end up in admin transfers with quiet files. Brennan walked to the water station, grabbed a canteen, drank without hurry. Sweat traced lines down her temples, but her hands were steady. She set the canteen down, pulled a small green notebook from her cargo pocket, and made a quick note. Hollis watched, his grin fading slightly. Draven wandered closer, curiosity getting the better of caution. What are you writing, Brennan? A diary entry? Dear diary, today the mean sergeant hurt my feelings. She clicked the pen closed, slid the notebook back into her pocket, and met his eyes. Still nothing. No comeback, no defense, just that same flat, unreadable stare. Draven's smirk faltered. He stepped back. Hollis filled the gap immediately, sensing weakness in his partner. Draven, don't let her spook you. She's harmless. Probably writing down tips she Googled last night. He raised his voice again, playing to the crowd. All right, everyone. Let's get moving. Wall climb next. Brennan, try not to break a nail. The group shuffled toward the 12-foot obstacle wall, a plywood and timber structure designed to test upper body strength and problem-solving. Brennan fell into line near the back. Jackson moved himself closer, pretending to adjust a climbing harness on the rack. When she passed, he spoke, voice low. That ink on your arm, the code, where'd you serve? Brennan glanced at him. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. Can't say, Master Sergeant. Jackson's jaw worked. He wanted to push, but the yard was too public. Too many ears. He nodded once and let her move past. But his mind was already pulling files from memory. Task Force 17, Operation Sandstorm. The unit that didn't exist on paper. The operation that saved 40 coalition lives in a desert no one was supposed to know about. And the eagle badge, wings spread over coordinates. If that tattoo was real, Brennan wasn't just some admin transfer. She was a ghost. The wall climb started without ceremony. Hollis went first, scaling it in 18 seconds with unnecessary grunting and a flex at the top. Draven followed, slower, more careful. Others took their turns, some passing, some struggling. When Brennan's name was called, Hollis made a show of checking his watch. Time is ready, Brennan. Don't worry. We'll give you the full 2 minutes if you need it. She approached the wall. Behind her, Jackson positioned himself for a better view. Something about this felt wrong. The wall hooks, the handholds, they looked slightly off. Hollis had been near the structure earlier, adjusting something. Jackson's instincts prickled. Brennan jumped, caught the first handhold, pulled. Her boots found purchase on the lower grips. She moved upward in smooth, confident bursts. 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. The crowd watched in reluctant silence. In the 12-foot mark, her left hand reached for the final hook. It gave. Metal scraped against wood, the hook pulling loose from its anchor point. Brennan's weight shifted suddenly, her left side dropping. For a fraction of a second, she hung by one hand, body swinging toward open air and a 12-foot fall onto packed dirt. Gasps erupted. Draven's phone camera caught it all. But Brennan didn't fall. Her right hand locked, her core twisted. Her left hand released the useless hook and slapped flat against the top edge of the wall. Fingertips digging into the plywood rim, with a grip that shouldn't have been possible without training. Lots of training. She pulled, shoulders straining, and hauled herself over the top in one brutal, efficient motion. She dropped down the other side, landed in a crouch, and stood. The yard went quiet. Jackson's mouth thinned. That recovery wasn't luck. That was survival technique, fingertip edge holds, core stabilization under sudden load. He'd seen it once in a mountain warfare course taught by instructors who'd worked in places that didn't make the news. Hollis recovered first, forcing a laugh. See, somebody rigged that for her. Probably loosened the hook ahead of time so she could play hero. Brennan walked back around the wall, breathing steady. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. She didn't defend herself. Didn't accuse Hollis, even though Jackson saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes when she glanced at the loose hook. She knew it had been tampered with, and she knew who did it. But she said nothing. Draven, emboldened by Hollis's deflection, stepped forward with his phone. "Smile, Brennan. This is going in the group chat. Everyone's going to love the fake war hero who can't even climb a wall without help." He snapped 3 photos. The tattoo, her face, the wall. Then he turned and started typing, thumbs flying across the screen. Within 30 seconds, the images hit the unit's private messaging group. 18 people reacted with laughing emojis. Comments rolled in. "Wannabe alert. Pinterest tactical. Cute ink. Did your boyfriend draw it?" Brennan glanced at her forearm. The eagle stared back, talons gripping the code that only a handful of people in the world could verify. She pulled her sleeves down, covering it. Not out of shame, out of calculation. Hollis was loud. Draven was sloppy. And loud, sloppy people made mistakes when they thought they were winning. "Have you ever been judged wrong just because of how you look?" Hit that like button if you believe justice always comes, even if it is late. And smash the thanks button to support stories like this so they keep being told. The training rotation continued. Next up was a tactical gear inspection, followed by a timed ammo can carry. Lieutenant Marcus Carver, the range officer, arrived at 9:45 a.m. to oversee the second half of drills. He was 30, sharp-featured, and by the book in a way that made him either very reliable or very dangerous, depending on which side of the rules you stood. He carried a clipboard and a reputation for zero tolerance on safety violations. Hollis saw an opportunity during the ammo can carry. While Brennan was mid-lift, Hollis pulled Carver aside near the equipment shed. Jackson, restocking climbing rope 20 feet away, strained to hear over the background noise. He caught fragments. "Safety protocol violation, sir. Removed gloves during the climb. Could have injured someone." Carver's brow furrowed. He glanced toward Brennan, who was setting down a 40-pound ammo can with textbook form, back straight, knees bent. Hollis handed over a piece of paper, a hastily written report with today's date and Brennan's name at the top. Carver scanned it, expression unreadable. "You're filing this officially, Sergeant Hollis?" "Yes, sir." "Regulations are regulations," Carver nodded slowly. "I'll look into it." Hollis walked away wearing a grin that made Jackson's fists clench. A false safety report was serious business. It could trigger an investigation, a suspension, even a discharge if the command chain wanted someone gone badly enough. And Hollis had just weaponized the system against someone who wasn't defending herself. Jackson approached Carver after Hollis left. "Is there permission to speak freely?" Carver looked up from the clipboard. "Go ahead, Master Sergeant." "I was supervising the wall climb. Corporal Brennan wore gloves the entire time." "I can confirm that personally." Carver studied him for a long moment. "Noted, but Sergeant Hollis has filed a formal complaint." "I have to investigate." "Understood, sir. Just wanted the record to show what I saw." Carver's eyes flicked toward Brennan, who was now helping a younger private adjust their grip on an ammo can, quietly, showing proper hand placement. Her movements were instructive, patient, not the behavior of someone cutting corners. "Appreciate the input, Master Sergeant." Jackson walked away, jaw tight. He'd done what he could within the structure. Now it was up to Carver to decide whether he'd follow evidence or politics. The drills wore on. At 11 a.m., Carver called for a hydration break. Soldiers scattered to the shade, grabbing water and energy bars. Brennan sat alone on a bench near the gear racks, peeling an orange with careful precision. Jackson watched her from across the yard. She didn't fidget, didn't check her phone, didn't seek company. Just ate her orange in silence, segment by segment, eyes on the middle distance. Draven and 2 others huddled near the latrine building, phones out, shoulders shaking with laughter. Jackson didn't need to see the screens to know they were scrolling through the group chat, adding more comments, more mockery, building a story. Brennan the pretender. Brennan the fake. Brennan the easy target. What they didn't see was the way her left hand rested on her thigh, fingers tapping in a specific rhythm. 4 beats, pause, 4 beats, pause, a code or a grounding technique, or both. At 11:15 a.m., Carver walked into the center of the yard and raised his voice. Brennan front and center. Heads turned, conversations died. Brennan stood, brushed orange peel residue from her hands, and walked forward. Her pace was measured, unhurried. When she stopped in front of Carver, she stood at parade rest, hands behind her back, eyes forward. Carver held up the report Hollis had given him. Corporal Brennan, I've received a safety complaint regarding your conduct during this morning's wall climb, specifically an accusation that you removed required protective gloves, violating training protocol. Do you have a response? The yard held its breath. 35 pairs of eyes locked on Brennan. Hollis stood off to the side, arms crossed, face smug. Draven had his phone out again. Recording. Brennan's voice, when it came, was quiet, controlled. I wore gloves the entire climb, sir. Master Sergeant Jackson can confirm. Carver glanced at Jackson, who nodded once. Hollis stepped forward, voice rising. Sir, with respect, I was closer to the wall. I saw her take them off halfway up. Carver looked between them. Hollis, loud and confident. Brennan, silent and still. Jackson, steady and sure. 3 conflicting accounts. No video evidence that wasn't from Draven's phone, which conveniently didn't capture glove details. Corporal Brennan, until this matter is resolved, you're suspended from today's remaining drills. Report to the company office at 1 p.m. for a formal statement. Brennan's expression didn't change. Yes, sir. Dismissed. She turned and walked toward the gear shed to collect her belongings. The yard erupted in whispers. Hollis exchanged a triumphant look with Draven. Jackson watched stone-faced as Brennan gathered her pack, her notebook, her canteen. She moved without haste, methodical and calm, as if being publicly suspended meant nothing, but her breathing shifted again. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. As she walked past Hollis toward the exit gate, he leaned in, voice low enough that only she and a few nearby could hear. Told you this wasn't your place. Should have stayed wherever you came from. She stopped, turned her head just slightly enough to meet his eyes, and for the first time all morning, she smiled. It was small, cold, the kind of smile that didn't reach anywhere close to warmth. Then she kept walking. Hollis frowned, the expression of a man who just won a fight, but felt uneasy about the victory. Draven laughed it off, slapping his shoulder. She's done, man. Carver's going to bury her. Hollis nodded, but his eyes followed Brennan until she disappeared through the gate. Jackson waited until the group dispersed for lunch before pulling out his phone. He scrolled through old contacts, found a number he hadn't called in 3 years, and hit dial. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Jackson, this better be good. It is. I need you to run a name for me. Unofficial, Corporal Kate Brennan. Current assignment, Fort Benning. Transferred in 4 weeks ago. What's the flag? She's got a tattoo. Task Force 17 Eagle, Operation Sandstorm Code. Silence on the other end. Then, you sure? I'm looking at it. That unit doesn't exist on paper, Dale. I know. More silence. Give me 2 hours. I'll call you back. The line went dead. Jackson pocketed his phone and stared across the empty training yard. The sun climbed higher, heat shimmering off the red clay. Somewhere in the distance, a drill sergeant barked orders. Life continued as normal. But normal, Jackson suspected, was about to break. At 1 p.m., Brennan sat in a grey-walled office across from Lieutenant Carver, who reviewed her service file on a desktop computer. The file was thin, suspiciously thin. Basic training, advanced individual training and administration, assignment to a logistics unit in Germany. Transfer stateside. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that explained the tattoo or the climbing technique or the way she'd recovered from that wall hook failure like someone who'd done it before under much worse conditions. Carver leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Corporal, your record says you're admin, logistics support, never deployed to a combat zone. That's correct, sir? That's correct, sir. So, explain the tattoo. Brennan's hands rested on her knees, relaxed. It's personal, sir. Personal how? A tribute to what? Someone I knew, Carver's eyes narrowed. Someone you knew had clearance for Task Force 17 Insignia? Brennan met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I can't speak to that, sir. Can't or won't. They both. The room temperature seemed to drop. Carver tapped a pen against his desk, thinking. Hollis's report sat to his right, official and damning. Jackson's verbal testimony sat in his memory, contradictory and insistent. And in front of him sat a corporal who climbed like a special operator, stayed calm under public embarrassment, and carried a tattoo that shouldn't exist outside classified circles. Something didn't add up. Corporal Brennan, I'm going to be direct. If you're lying about your service record, that's grounds for discharge. If that tattoo represents stolen valor, that's criminal. But if you're telling the truth and there's something in your file that's hidden or classified, I need you to give me something. Anything. A name, a contact, a verification code. Because right now, I've got a sergeant filing reports that paint you as either incompetent or dishonest. And I've got zero evidence to counter that except a gut feeling and one master sergeant's word. Brennan was quiet for 10 seconds. In 20, Carver waited. Finally, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small slip of paper. She slid it across the desk. On it, written in precise block letters, was a phone number and a single word. Sandstorm. Call that number, sir. Tell them the word. They'll verify what they can. Carver picked up the paper, studied it. And if they don't, then I'm whatever Sergeant Hollis says I am. Carver held her gaze, searching for cracks. There were none. He folded the paper and tucked it into his shirt pocket. You're dismissed for now. You stay available. I'll be in touch. Brennan stood, saluted, and left. Carver sat alone in the office, staring at the closed door. Then he pulled out the paper, stared at the number, and wondered what kind of hornet's nest he was about to kick. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down on the barracks complex. Brennan walked across the quad, past groups of soldiers heading to chow, past the motor pool where engines roared and sergeants shouted instructions. She moved through it all like a ghost, visible but untouchable. Near the corner of the admin building, Draven and two others leaned against a wall, scrolling phones. When Brennan passed, Draven called out, "Hey, Brennan, saw you got benched." That's got a sting. Maybe next time don't fake credentials. Yeah. His friends laughed. Brennan didn't break stride, didn't look, just kept walking, her pace unchanged, her breathing steady. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Draven frowned. Did she just ignore me? Guess she's got nothing to say. Or she knows she's screwed. They went back to their phones, already bored. Brennan turned the corner and disappeared from view. What they didn't see was the way her hand drifted to her forearm, fingers brushing over the fabric covering the tattoo. What they didn't know was that every insult, every photo, every mocking comment was being recorded. Not by her, by someone else. Someone watching from a distance with resources, and patience and a very long memory. Jackson's phone buzzed at 2:30 p.m. He stepped away from the motor pool bay where he'd been inspecting vehicle maintenance logs and answered. Talk to me, the same gruff voice from earlier, but quieter now, careful. Dale, I ran the name. Kate Brennan. Born 1996, enlisted 2015. On paper, she's exactly what her file says. Admin, logistics, clean record, and off paper. A pause. Off paper, there's a hole. 2019 to 2021. 24 months where her movements don't match her assignments. She was listed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, but flight logs, base access records, they're missing or hidden. And that tattoo you mentioned. I showed the description to someone who would know. He went pale. Said if she's got that ink and it's real, she's not admin. She's Tier 1 adjacent. Support maybe, intelligence, possibly direct action in a limited capacity. But whatever she did, it's buried deep. Jackson's jaw clenched. Operation Sandstorm. I can't confirm that operation exists. Dale, officially or unofficially. Unofficially. If someone has that code tattooed on their body, and they're still breathing, they either saved a lot of lives, or they know where a lot of bodies are buried. Maybe both. So why is she here? Why now? Why playing admin in a training unit? The voice on the other end went very quiet. That I don't know, but if I were you, I'd ask yourself this. What kind of person voluntarily takes a demotion, hides their credentials, and lets people like Hollis walk all over them? Either she's running from something, or she's hunting something, and my money's on the latter. The call ended. Jackson stood in the motor pool, phone still pressed to his ear, mind racing. Hunting. That made sense. Hollis's reaction to the tattoo had been too strong, too quick. He'd escalated from mockery to false reporting in under 3 hours. That wasn't normal bully behavior. That was someone trying to get rid of a threat before it could act, which meant Hollis had something to hide. Something big enough that even the possibility of an undercover operator spooked him into making sloppy moves. Jackson pocketed his phone and headed toward the company office. He needed to talk to Carver before that phone call happened. Needed to make sure the lieutenant understood what he might be stepping into. But when he arrived, Carver's office was empty. A note on the desk said he'd gone to the command building for a classified call. Jackson cursed under his breath and turned to leave. Behind him, through the window, he saw Brennan crossing the quad again, heading toward the barracks. And behind her, 20 yards back, Hollis and Draven followed, phones out whispering. Jackson's instincts screamed. He stepped outside, keeping them in view. They didn't approach Brennan directly, just shadowed her. Filming, documenting, building a case or building leverage, Jackson couldn't tell which. But the predatory way they moved, the coordination, it wasn't random harassment. It was reconnaissance. Brennan reached the barracks entrance and paused. She turned slowly and looked directly at Hollis. 30 yards separated them. She didn't wave, didn't gesture, just looked. And in that look, Jackson saw something he recognized from his years in the field. Patience. The kind of patience that came from knowing the enemy was about to make a fatal mistake. And all you had to do was wait. Think she can turn this around? Drop your prediction in the comments below. Evening fell over Fort Benning, with the usual sounds of a base winding down. Chow hall clatter, diesel engines cooling, distant cadences from units running punishment laps. Brennan sat alone in the barracks common area. Embattered paperback novel opened in front of her, though her eyes hadn't moved across the page in 10 minutes. Around her, other soldiers watched television, played cards, argued about sports. She was part of the scenery, invisible. At 7 p.m., her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Training yard 9 out p.m. Come alone. She stared at the message for 5 seconds, then deleted it. She marked her page, closed the book, and stood. No one noticed her leave. The training yard at night was a different animal. Shadows pulled around equipment. Floodlights created harsh circles of visibility, surrounded by deep black. Brennan arrived at 8:55 p.m., hands in pockets, walking casual. The yard appeared empty. Then Hollis stepped out from behind the wall structure, Draven flanking him. 2 others lingered near the rope climb, faces half hidden. Glad you could make it. Brennan. Hollis's voice carried that same mocking edge, but something underneath it had shifted, harder, more desperate. Brennan stopped 15 feet away, said nothing. Here's the thing, Hollis continued, stepping closer. You're causing problems, asking questions, making people nervous, and we can't have that. Still nothing from Brennan. Just that calm, waiting silence. Draven pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward her. Photos, the group chat, but also something else. Screenshots of inventory logs, equipment serial numbers, shipping manifests, and in several images, names. Hollis's name, Draven's name, others she didn't recognize. You're smart, Brennan. You've probably figured some of this out already, so let me save us both time. You're going to request a transfer tomorrow. You're going to tell Carver this unit isn't a good fit, and you're going to disappear back to whatever desk job you crawled out of. Brennan's eyes moved from the phone to Hollis's face. She still didn't speak. Or, Hollis said, voice dropping, we make sure Carver gets enough reports, enough complaints, enough evidence of incompetence that you're not just transferred. You're discharged dishonorably if we can manage it. The 2 soldiers near the rope stepped closer, boxing her in. 4-1 at night. Off the record, Brennan took a slow breath. 4 in, 4 hold. 4 out, 4 hold. Then she spoke, voice low and clear. No, Hollis blinked. What? No, I'm not transferring. I'm not leaving. And you're going to have to try a lot harder than fake reports and group chat photos. Draven laughed, nervous energy spilling out. You think you're tough? You think that fake tattoo scares us? Brennan's eyes shifted to him. It's not fake. Prove it. She smiled again, that same cold expression from the morning. I am. Hollis's face darkened. He took another step, close enough now that Brennan could smell stale coffee and anger. You don't know who you're messing with. Yes, Brennan said quietly. I do. The moment stretched. Somewhere in the distance, a vehicle horn honked. A door slammed. The base continued existing outside this bubble of confrontation. Hollis's hand twitched toward his belt, then stopped. He was smart enough to know that actual violence would cross a line. Even he couldn't uncross. Not here. Not yet. You're making a mistake, Brennan. We'll see. Hollis stepped back, motioning to the others. They retreated in formation, leaving Brennan standing alone under the floodlights. As they walked away, Draven looked back once, confusion and something like fear working on his face. When they were gone, Brennan let out a long, slow breath. Her hands, which had been loose at her sides, unclenched. She'd been ready for them to cross that line, ready to defend herself within the minimum necessary parameters, ready to end this a different way. But they hadn't, which meant they were still useful, still gathering evidence, still making mistakes. She walked back to the barracks through a route she knew avoided cameras. Inside her room, she sat on her bunk and pulled out the green notebook. She wrote 3 lines, names, times, quotes. Then she photographed the page with her phone and sent it to a number that had no name attached. The response came 30 seconds later. Confirmed. Continue. She deleted both messages, closed the notebook, and lay back on her bunk. Tomorrow would bring the next round, the next test, the next chance for Hollis to slip. And he would slip. They always did, because people who thought they were winning got careless, and careless people left trails. Brennan closed her eyes, slowed her breathing, and let the familiar rhythm carry her towards sleep. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Somewhere across the base, Lieutenant Carver sat in his car outside the command building, phone in hand, staring at the number Brennan had given him. He'd spent 2 hours in a classified briefing that had raised more questions than it answered. Now he was supposed to make a call that might blow up his career depending on who answered and what they said. He dialed. 3 rings, then a voice, calm and professional. Identification: Lieutenant Marcus Carver, Fort Benning. I was given this number by Corporal Kate Brennan. The word is sandstorm. Silence. 5 seconds. 10 then. Stand by. The line went quiet but didn't disconnect. Carver waited, heart rate climbing. 90 seconds passed. Then a different voice came on. Older, carrying weight. Lieutenant Carver, you have 30 seconds to explain why you're calling this number. Carver's mouth went dry, but he pushed through. Sir, I have a soldier under my command who presented this contact for verification purposes. She's facing accusations that don't match her observable skill set. I need to know if her service record is accurate or if there's information I'm not cleared for. Name: Corporal Kate Brennan. Another pause. Shorter this time. Her record is accurate as written, Lieutenant. That's all you need to know. Sir, with respect, that's not enough. I have sergeants filing reports, unit togetherness issues, and a tattoo that suggests the tattoo is authorized. The ink is real. Everything else is need to know, and you don't need to know. What you do need to do is make sure Corporal Brennan is protected from harassment and given the space to complete her assignment. Am I clear? Her assignment? Sir, did I stutter, Lieutenant? Carver swallowed. No, sir. Good. If you have further questions, they go through official channels. This number is now burned. Don't call it again. The line went dead. Carver sat in the dark car, phone still pressed to his ear, mind reeling. Protected. Assignment. Authorized. Which meant Brennan wasn't a victim. She was an operator. And Hollis, whether he knew it or not, had just painted a target on his own back. Carver started the engine and drove toward the company office. He had reports to file, official ones, the kind that would put Hollis under a microscope, whether he liked it or not. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Back in the barracks, Brennan slept soundly, hands folded over her stomach, breathing steady. On her forearm, hidden beneath rolled-down sleeves, the eagle tattoo seemed to watch the darkness. Talons gripping coordinates that pointed toward justice. The clock ticked toward midnight. The base settled into uneasy quiet, and in the space between what people knew and what they suspected, a reckoning gathered momentum, like a storm building on a distant horizon. Part 1 ended not with answers, but with the promise that answers were coming. And when they arrived, they would be final. Morning arrived with the kind of tension that made the air feel thick. AM, and the training yard already simmered with whispered conversations and sideways glances. Word had spread overnight, the way rumors always did on a base. Brennan had been suspended. Hollis had filed official charges. Carver had made mysterious phone calls, and somewhere in the bureaucratic machinery, wheels were turning that nobody could see, but everyone could feel. Brennan wasn't scheduled to be on the yard. Technically, she was confined to administrative duties pending investigation. But when Jackson arrived at 7:15 a.m. and saw her sitting on the same bench as yesterday, gear bag at her feet, face calm, he felt something click into place. She wasn't here by accident. She was here because someone had told her to be here. Hollis noticed her immediately. His swagger from the previous night evaporated, replaced by something tighter around the eyes. He talked with Draven in urgent whispers near the equipment shed. Both men checking their phones obsessively. Jackson positioned himself where he could observe them both. Notepad in hand, every instinct on high alert. At 7:30 a.m., Lieutenant Carver emerged from the company building flanked by 2 MPs. The yard went silent. Soldiers who'd been stretching, joking, preparing for drills all froze mid-motion. MPs on a training yard meant something serious, something official, something that left marks on permanent records. Carver's voice carried across the dirt and gravel. Formation now. Bodies scrambled into ranks, boots finding their positions with practiced efficiency. Brennan rose from her bench and moved to join them, but Carver held up a hand. "Corporal Brennan, you stay where you are." She stopped, returned to the bench, and sat. Her hands rested on her knees, loose and ready. Jackson could see her breathing from where he stood. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, 4 counts hold. The combat rhythm, the calm before precision action. Hollis stood in formation, jaw clenched, eyes darting between Carver and the MPs. Draven beside him had gone pale, phone clutched like a lifeline in his cargo pocket. The 2 soldiers who'd flanked them last night at the confrontation were scattered elsewhere in the formation, trying to look invisible. Carver walked to the center of the formation, hands clasped behind his back. When he spoke, his voice was level, but carried an edge sharp enough to cut. Yesterday, accusations were made regarding Corporal Brennan's conduct during training. Those accusations have been investigated. What I'm about to do is highly irregular, but given the circumstances and the chain of command's direct input, it's necessary. He paused, letting the weight settle. Master Sergeant Jackson, front and center. Jackson stepped forward, moving with the deliberate pace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He stopped beside Carver, came to attention, and waited. Master Sergeant, you were supervising the obstacle wall climb yesterday. You filed a verbal testimony, contradicting Sergeant Hollis's written report. I need you to clarify your statement for the record in front of this formation. Jackson's voice came out parade ground clear. Sir, I observed Corporal Brennan throughout the entire wall climb sequence. She wore regulation gloves from start to finish. The hook failure was equipment malfunction, not operator error. Her recovery technique was textbook. No safety violations occurred on her part. Murmurs rippled through the formation. Hollis's face darkened, but he stayed silent. Carver nodded once. Noted. Thank you, Master Sergeant. He turned toward Brennan. Corporal Brennan, on your feet. She stood, shouldered her gear bag, and walked forward. The yard watched every step. When she reached Carver, she stopped at attention, eyes forward, face giving nothing away. Carver studied her for a long moment, and in that pause, Jackson saw something pass between them. An understanding, a confirmation of whatever conversation or communication had happened behind closed doors. Corporal, I'm going to ask you to do something, and I need you to comply fully. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Roll up your sleeves, both of them, all the way to your shoulders. The yard went dead silent. Brennan's hands moved to her right sleeve first, unfastening the Velcro cuff and rolling the fabric up past her elbow, past her bicep, bunching it at her shoulder. Tanned skin, lean muscle, and faint scars from old training injuries. Then her left arm, slower this time because everyone knew what was coming. The tattoo emerged inch by inch. First the talons, black ink stark against skin. then the body of the eagle, wings spreading as the fabric climbed higher, and finally fully visible in the morning sun, the complete design. The eagle's head faced forward, fierce and detailed. Beneath it, a string of numbers and letters, TF-17, 2K-19, below that in smaller script, OP Sandstorm. Jackson heard sharp intakes of breath from multiple directions. Several soldiers leaned forward, squinting to read the code. Hollis took an involuntary step back, bumping into the person behind him. Draven's phone slipped from his fingers and hit the dirt with a muted thump. Carver stepped closer, examining the ink with clinical attention. Master Sergeant Jackson, you served in Joint Special Operations Command for 6 years. You recognize this badge? Jackson's throat was dry, but his voice stayed steady. Yes, sir. That's a Task Force 17 marking. The Eagle design is specific to maritime interdiction units operating. Under JSOC, the operation code refers to a classified action in 2019. I've seen that symbol once before in a briefing I wasn't supposed to attend. And can just anyone get this tattoo? No, sir. The design is protected. Getting it without authorization is a federal offense. Having it and being able to verify service is... He paused, searching for the right words. It means she's been places that don't exist on maps and done things that don't exist in reports. A collective exhale swept through the formation. This wasn't bravado. This wasn't some soldier playing dress-up with stolen valor. This was real. And everyone who'd laughed, who'd mocked, who'd shared those photos in the group chat suddenly felt the ground shift beneath them. But Carver wasn't finished. Corporal Brennan, your service record lists you as administrative support, logistics, coordination, never deployed to combat zones. How do you reconcile that with this? He gestured to the tattoo. Brennan's voice came quiet but clear. My record is accurate as written, sir. What's not in the record is also accurate, meaning some things don't get written down. Carver nodded slowly, as if this was the answer he'd expected. Do you have any physical proof beyond the tattoo, documentation, identification? Brennan reached beneath her collar and pulled out her dog tags, 2 metal rectangles on a ball chain. Standard issue except for what was stamped on them. She lifted the chain over her head and handed them to Carver. He held them up, reading aloud. Brennan Kate, serial number B4471, TF17. He stopped, eyes widening slightly. Master Sergeant, is that serial format standard? Jackson stepped closer, looked, and felt his pulse spike. No, sir. Standard Army serials don't include unit designations. That format is reserved for personnel whose primary service records are compartmentalized. It's verification that she's exactly who the tattoo says she is. Carver handed the tags back to Brennan, who replaced them around her neck and tucked them back beneath her shirt. Then he pulled out a tablet from the MP beside him, tapped a few commands, and turned the screen toward the formation. This is a classified personnel database. I was given temporary access this morning by someone whose rank I'm not at liberty to disclose. He entered Brennan's serial number. The screen flickered, then displayed a record. Most of it was hidden. Black bars covering dates and locations, but several things were visible. A photo of Brennan, younger in tactical gear, a list of awards, all classified, and at the bottom a status line, active, special assignment, Phase 2. The gasps this time were audible, uncontrolled. Someone in the back rank whispered, "Holy cow!" Carver closed the tablet and handed it back. When he turned to face the formation, his entire demeanor had shifted. This wasn't a lieutenant addressing subordinates anymore. This was a junior officer addressing someone who operated in circles he'd never reach. Corporal Brennan, his voice was formal, respectful. On behalf of this unit, I apologize for the treatment you've received. The accusations against you are dismissed. Your conduct has been exemplary. Then, in a move that made Jackson's chest tighten, Carver snapped to attention and saluted. The formation erupted, not with sound, but with motion. 35 soldiers came to attention in ragged unison, hands flying to their brows in salute. The wave spread like wildfire, even catching the soldiers who'd been part of Hollis's harassment circle. They saluted because the situation demanded it, because rank and proof had just collided with prejudice and lost. Brennan returned the salute, crisp and measured, then lowered her hand. Her face remained neutral, but Jackson saw the tightness around her eyes ease slightly. Vindication, even when expected, carried weight. Carver dropped his salute and turned toward Hollis. Sergeant Hollis stepped forward. Hollis didn't move. His feet seemed rooted to the dirt, face cycling through shock, anger, and something close to panic. Draven nudged him, and finally he stumbled forward, movements jerky and uncoordinated. Sergeant Hollis, you filed a false safety report. You harassed a fellow soldier, and based on preliminary findings, you may be involved in activities that extend beyond simple misconduct. Carver gestured to the MPs. You're confined to quarters pending formal investigation. Hand over your phone, ID card, and any electronic devices. Sir, Hollis's voice cracked. This is a mistake. I was just doing my job, maintaining standards. By falsifying documents? By organizing harassment? By threatening a soldier off the record in the training yard at 9 p.m. last night? Hollis's mouth snapped shut. His eyes darted to Brennan, who watched him with that same flat, patient expression. He'd been so certain she was isolated, vulnerable, without allies or help. But every word he'd spoken, every threat he'd made had been observed, documented, and filed away by someone with the resources to act. One of the MPs stepped forward. Sergeant, we can do this easy or hard. Your choice. Hollis's shoulders sagged. He pulled out his phone, his wallet, his ID card, and handed them over. The MP secured them in an evidence bag, while the other took position behind Hollis. As they began to escort him away, he tried one last time. She's setting us up! This whole thing is a setup. She came here to trap us. Carver's expression didn't change. Keep talking, Sergeant. Make it easier for the investigators. They led him away. Draven stood in formation, visibly shaking, watching his ally disappear toward the MP station. The remaining soldiers looked anywhere but at each other, the weight of involvement settling like ash. Carver addressed the formation again. Corporal Draven stepped forward. Draven obeyed, legs unsteady. When he stopped in front of Carver, he looked like a man watching his future collapse in real time. Corporal, you have a choice to make right now. You participated in harassment. You distributed images without consent. You were present at an off-record confrontation that violated multiple regulations, but you're also not the primary actor here. Carver's voice dropped, almost gentle. So I'm going to ask you once, and your answer determines what happens next. Are you involved in anything beyond harassment? Anything involving equipment, inventory, or unauthorized transactions? Draven's mouth opened and closed silently. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the morning chill. He looked at Brennan, searching for something, mercy or judgment, or a sign of what to do. She gave him nothing. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, I need a lawyer. Carver sighed. Take him. The second MP moved forward. Draven didn't resist as they confiscated his devices and led him after Hollis. 2 down. The formation stood in stunned silence, wondering who else might be pulled from the ranks. Jackson stepped beside Carver, voice low. Sir, what's the actual scope here? Carver kept his eyes on the formation. Bigger than I thought. CID has been tracking equipment discrepancies for 6 months. Night vision devices, body armor, weapon attachments. Small quantities but high value. The trail led here to this unit, but they couldn't pinpoint the actors, so they sent in an auditor. He glanced at Brennan, someone who could blend in, observe, and draw out the guilty parties by appearing vulnerable. And Hollis took the bait. Hollis practically swallowed the hook. Line and rod. Jackson looked at Brennan, who'd returned to her bench and was calmly rolling her sleeves back down, covering the tattoo that had just rewritten the entire dynamic of the yard. How much of this did she engineer? All of it, Master Sergeant. Every insult she endured, every test she passed, every moment of humiliation was calculated to make Hollis and his network overconfident. And it worked. We've got phone logs, chat records, surveillance footage, and financial transactions. The moment he tried to intimidate her last night, he gave us probable cause to execute search warrants. Carver checked his watch, which are being served right now across the base. As if on cue, Jackson's phone buzzed. He checked the message, and his eyebrows rose. ECID just hit the logistics warehouse. Inbound 12 night vision units in a storage container that wasn't on any inventory list. Carver's jaw tightened. In 12 units. That's over $100,000 in gear. This isn't petty theft. This is organized smuggling. The formation was dismissed with instructions to remain on base and available for interviews. Soldiers dispersed in hushed clusters, phones emerging the moment they were out of immediate sight. The group chat that had mocked Brennan yesterday was probably exploding with panic today. Jackson approached Brennan, who was zipping up her gear bag with methodical precision. Corporal. She looked up. Master Sergeant? That was impressive and terrifying. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Thank you. How long have you known about the smuggling ring? Since week 2. Hollis moves stolen gear through a civilian contact who operates a surplus store off base. Draven handles the digital side, erasing inventory logs. 2 others in the unit provide muscle and lookout. It's a small operation but efficient. And you let them harass you for 4 weeks because harassment makes people comfortable. They think they're in control, and comfortable people make mistakes. She shouldered her bag. I needed them loud and sloppy. Mission accomplished! Jackson shook his head, half in admiration, half in disbelief. You've got ice in your veins, Corporal. I've got patience, Master Sergeant. There's a difference. Before he could respond, Carver called out, Brennan, my office now! She nodded to Jackson and headed toward the company building. He watched her go. This quiet soldier who'd absorbed mockery and threats like body armor. Never flinching, never breaking, just waiting for the exact right moment to reveal the truth. It was the kind of discipline that couldn't be taught, only earned through fire. Inside Carver's office, the lieutenant closed the door and gestured to a chair. Brennan sat, posture relaxed but alert. Carver settled behind his desk and steepled his fingers. I need to know something, Corporal. Off the record, why didn't you just flash your credentials day 1? Why endure all that? Brennan was quiet for a moment, organizing her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, but carried an intensity that filled the small room. Because predators reveal themselves when they think the prey is weak. I wore their contempt like bait. Hollis wasn't just a bully, sir. He was the tip of a smuggling ring that's been bleeding this base for months. If I'd shown my credentials immediately, he would have gone silent, buried evidence, maybe fled. I needed him loud, arrogant, sloppy. She leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on Carver's. 6 weeks of insults bought me names, phone logs, and confessions they didn't know they were making. The tattoo wasn't bait by itself. It was the hook. Hollis couldn't resist, mocking something he thought was stolen valor. But every laugh, every photo, every false report was evidence. Documentation of harassment, proof of intent, a pattern of behavior that gave CID probable cause when they needed it. Carver listened. Transfixed, I didn't lose my dignity, Lieutenant. I weaponized it. Every time Hollis pushed, I catalogued. Every time Draven posted a photo, it went into a file. Every threat, every confrontation, it all built a case that's now airtight. And now 40 stolen night vision units are recovered. 9 smugglers are in custody. The supply chain is severed. The unit is clean. She sat back, hands resting on her knees. You asked why I stayed silent. Because justice isn't loud, sir. It's patient. It waits for the guilty to condemn themselves, and then it acts with precision. Her voice softened just barely. Strength isn't noise. It's discipline when no one is clapping. I kept quiet, so the wrong men would speak, and they did loudly. The office fell silent except for the distant hum of the air conditioning. Carver absorbed her words, understanding dawning in layers. This wasn't just an investigation. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Brennan had turned herself into bait, absorbed punishment, and used every ounce of abuse as ammunition. And she'd done it without breaking character once. Carver searched for words. That's beyond what I expected from this conversation. You asked for honesty, sir, and you delivered. He pulled a file from his desk drawer and slid it across. This just came through from CID. They want you for a debrief at 2 p.m. Full accounting of your observations, timeline of events, and recommendations for systemic improvements. Brennan took the file, scanned the cover sheet. Understood, there's more. Carver's expression shifted to something almost cautious. Your handler sent a message through channels. Once the debrief is complete and you've testified at the court-martial proceedings, You're being reassigned. New target, domestic theater this time. Her eyes sharpened. Phase 2. That means something to you. It means the work continues. This story shows the power of patience. If you believe in justice, share this so more people can see it. And stay tuned for the next part because her mission is far from over. Carver stood, came around the desk, and extended his hand. Brennan rose and shook it, firm and professional. For what it's worth, Corporal, you have my respect. What you did took guts and brains. I'm sorry you had to endure what you did to get here. It was necessary, sir, and it worked. She released his hand, gathered the file, and headed for the door. Before she left, Carver called out one more time. Brennan, she paused, hand on the doorknob. That line you said about justice being patient. I'm stealing that, she smiled genuinely this time. It's yours, Lieutenant. The door closed behind her. Carver sat back down, staring at the empty chair, mind still processing the conversation. Somewhere in the machinery of military justice, wheels were grinding forward. Hollis would face court-martial for theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Draven would likely cooperate for a reduced sentence. The other conspirators would be rounded up within hours. And Brennan would move on to the next mission, the next target. The next group of people who underestimated her because she looked quiet and unassuming. The consequences rippled outward in growing circles. Immediate consequences hit within the hour. Hollis and Draven were formally charged, confined to the brig pending trial. Their phones and computers were seized, contents analyzed by digital forensics teams who found encrypted messages, transaction records, and communications with the off-base surplus store owner. By noon, that civilian was in federal custody, his store being torn apart by ATF and CID investigators. Personal consequences followed. Hollis lost his rank, his security clearance, and any chance at a military career. His family was notified. His name would be attached to this scandal permanently. Draven, facing similar charges, but with the option to cooperate, spent the afternoon in an interview room, spilling everything he knew in exchange for potential leniency. The two soldiers who'd acted as muscle were identified through surveillance footage and questioned. Both claimed ignorance of the smuggling, insisting they'd only followed Hollis's orders regarding Brennan. The truth would emerge during investigation, but their careers were already tainted by association. Professional consequences reshaped the unit. By 3 p.m., the battalion commander had ordered a complete inventory audit of all sensitive equipment. Training was suspended for 48 hours, while CID conducted interviews. New protocols were announced, mandatory ethics retraining, revised inventory procedures, and an anonymous reporting system for suspected misconduct. The message was clear. This unit had failed to police itself, and that failure would be corrected through institutional reform. Community consequences spread through the base like ripples in a pond. Soldiers who'd participated in mocking Brennan, who'd shared those photos, who'd laughed at the jokes, now faced uncomfortable conversations with leadership about command climate and respect. No formal charges for most of them, but their names were noted. Their judgment was questioned, and in a military culture where reputation mattered, that stain would follow them. The group chat where Draven had posted the tattoo photos became evidence in multiple proceedings. Every participant received counseling. Several were reassigned to different units, scattered across the base to prevent any lingering toxic culture from reconstituting. By 5 p.m., as the sun began its descent and the base started its evening rhythm, the training yard stood empty, except for Jackson and Brennan. They'd both given statements, signed documents, and been released pending further need. Jackson found her at the same bench where this had started, watching the obstacle wall where the hook had failed. Thinking about redoing that climb, he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. Thinking about how many times I wanted to quit, she said quietly. Week 3 was the worst. Hollis had convinced half the unit I was incompetent. I had no friends, no allies except my handler on the other end of encrypted messages. Every morning I woke up and had to choose to keep playing weak. But you didn't quit, no, because quitting meant they'd win. And more importantly, it meant the smuggling would continue. More gear stolen, more enemies equipped, maybe coalition lives lost because night vision ended up in the wrong hands. She turned to look at him. I couldn't live with that, Jackson nodded slowly. You know, when I first saw that tattoo, I thought maybe you were running from something, hiding. I was hiding, Master Sergeant. Just not from my past. I was hiding in plain sight, waiting for the guilty to expose themselves, and now I move on. There's always another mission, another target, another group of people who think the quiet ones are weak. She smiled, and it carried an edge. I'm going to spend my career proving them wrong. They sat in comfortable silence as the light faded. Across the base in the CID offices, investigators compiled evidence that would put multiple people behind bars. In the brig, Hollis stared at concrete walls and contemplated how badly he'd miscalculated. In the battalion commander's office, policy changes were drafted that would carry Brennan's invisible fingerprints for years to come. And, in a nondescript building in another state, Brennan's handler read her after-action report and smiled. The bait strategy had worked flawlessly. Subject had maintained cover under extreme stress. Target network had been completely compromised. Recovery rate of stolen equipment, 96%. Conviction likelihood near certain. The handler opened a new file on the computer screen. Title, Phase 2, Domestic Infrastructure Corruption. Below it, a new assignment, a new base, a new group of suspects who thought they were untouchable. And a new version of Kate Brennan with a different background. Different credentials, same patient determination. At 6 p.m., Brennan returned to her barracks room and found an envelope on her bunk. Inside, orders for reassignment effective in 72 hours. Destination hidden. Mission parameters hidden. But at the bottom, a handwritten note. Well done, Corporal. Next target is bigger. You ready? She tucked the note into her pocket, pulled out her green notebook, and turned to a fresh page. At the top she wrote 3 words. Phase 2, Domestic. Below it, she began listing principles, lessons learned, refinements to technique. The mockery had taught her which buttons to push. The harassment had shown her how predators hunted. The investigation had proven that patience properly applied was a weapon sharper than any blade. Outside her window, the base settled into evening routine. Chow hall lines formed. Barracks lights flickered on. Somewhere a drill sergeant called Cadence. Life continued, normal and mundane, while beneath the surface justice worked in shadows. Brennan closed the notebook, lay back on her bunk, and let her breathing slow. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. The combat rhythm that had sustained her through 6 weeks of calculated humiliation. The same rhythm that would carry her through whatever came next. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jackson. Heard you're shipping out. Drink before you go? She typed back. Negative. Early morning tomorrow, but thank you for the assist, Master Sergeant. His response came quickly. Any time, Corporal. And for the record, that tattoo isn't just ink. It's a promise. I'm glad you kept it. She smiled at the screen, then deleted the exchange. No traces, no trails, just the mission and the next step forward. At 9 p.m., she performed her final task of the day. She accessed her encrypted email and composed a brief message to her handler. Mission complete. All objectives achieved. Ready for Phase 2 deployment. Recommend expanding bait methodology to other high-risk installations. Subject remains committed and operational. The response came within 2 minutes. Acknowledged. New briefing packet attached. Review and destroy. Insertion begins Monday 6 a.m. Target profile. Larger network. Higher stakes. More sophisticated actors. You'll need everything you learned here and more. Still in? Brennan's fingers hovered over the keyboard for only a second. Affirmative. I'm ready. Good, because this time you're hunting someone who knows how hunters operate. Stay sharp, Corporal, and remember, justice isn't loud. It's patient, she finished, typing the words that had become her creed. I know. She downloaded the briefing packet, read it twice, memorized the key details, then deleted everything. The new target was a logistics officer suspected of coordinating equipment sales to foreign buyers. The network was larger, more cautious, more dangerous, and Brennan would once again become someone unremarkable. Someone easy to underestimate. Someone they'd never see coming until it was far too late. She packed her gear with methodical precision. Uniforms, boots, the green notebook. The dog tags that verified who she really was beneath whatever cover story she'd wear next. And last, carefully wrapped in a soft cloth. A small leather case containing a challenge coin, not the standard unit coin. This one was different. Worn smooth at the edges, stamped with an eagle and coordinates. A gift from the team she'd saved during Operation Sandstorm. The team whose names were hidden, whose mission didn't exist, whose gratitude came in the form of a coin she'd never spend and a tattoo she'd never regret. She held it for a moment, feeling the weight of memory and purpose, then tucked it into her pocket. Tomorrow, she'd leave Fort Benning behind. Leave Jackson and Carver and the unit that had mocked her and the smugglers who'd underestimated her. But the mission would continue because somewhere someone was stealing. Someone was cheating. Someone was putting lives at risk for profit. And Kate Brennan, quiet and patient and absolutely relentless, would be there to stop them. The lights in the barracks dimmed. Across the hall, soldiers laughed and played games and lived their ordinary lives. Unaware that one of their own was anything but ordinary, Brennan closed her eyes, slowed her breathing, and let the familiar rhythm carry her towards sleep. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new faces, new threats. But tonight, justice had won. And that was enough. The camera, if there had been one, would have pulled back slowly out of the barracks room across the base, rising into the night sky where stars burned cold and distant. And somewhere in that darkness, a radio signal pulsed, a file transferred, an operation launched. Phase 2 had begun. And the people who thought they were safe, who believed their crimes were hidden, who assumed no one was watching, were about to learn a hard truth. Justice wasn't loud. It was patient. And it was already inside the wire.